Welcome to the Lekbest channel. It's Andre with you, and I'm happy to present you our new original story. Varvara ran into the operating room, which she had just been cleaning. She had left her phone somewhere and couldn't find it. Someday, this bad habit of automatically putting her phone next to her and forgetting about it will lead her to no good. There was no one in the operating room. Just now, literally 5 minutes ago. The next operation was supposed to be in an hour, and then suddenly, there was a man lying on the table. What a strange thing, Varvara thought, but finding the phone was much more important. You never know who was put here. Maybe they brought him in urgently by ambulance or someone felt bad. This means they will perform an unscheduled operation, and then the schedule will simply shift. It's none of her business. Who is she? She is a small person here, a nurse. Give him, bring him, don't bother him, step aside. And then Varvara noticed a strange detail on the patient's body. In Venegal for anesthesia, and even a fairly large piece of the IV was dangling from it. Only it was not connected to anything. Well, that shouldn't be. A patient who has a needle in a vein cannot be connected to nothing. What kind of nurses are they who do not remove the system from the patient's hand? At that moment, she noticed her phone on the windowsill. Oh, there you are, Varvara whispered, grabbed the device and was about to leave, when she suddenly stopped. Well, she can't just leave everything like this. If this guy is going to be operated on, then where is the anesthesiologist? Why isn't he monitoring the patient's condition? Where is everyone, anyway? For a second, the worst thing seemed to her. What if the man is dead? Well, who knows for what reason he was brought to the operating room? What if there is no room in the morgue? She approached him on tiptoe, as if she was afraid to wake him. Oh God, what happiness! The man was breathing, though very intermittently and rarely. It was all abnormal. Varvara took a photo of the patient just in case and walked firmly to the head doctor's office. What was this? What kind of outrage was this? Why were patients just lying around in a hospital in such a state? Let Vladimir Ivanovich sort it out. In fact, Varvara, like many others, was afraid of the head doctor. He was strict, very strict, and didn't give anyone a break. He was especially picky with the junior medical staff. He would deprive them of their bonuses for every speck of dust. Let him admire what his doctors were doing. If anything, she had proof. Not only could a person simply feel bad, but there was also a needle. Varvara had known for a long time that no one would die from air, even if it got into Vienna. Of course, you need a bucket of air for a patient to really die. A few milligrams, even if they got in, would at worst give you a headache. Not fatal. You just can't leave sick people unattended like that. What if it starts? What if it falls? On the way to the head doctor's office, Varvara felt like not just a fighter for justice, she was a real revolutionary. What's more, Varvara was like a real Joan of Arc. Resolutely approaching the head doctor's office, Varvara heard voices inside, stopped in indecision and heard what the assembled people were talking about. It became clear that the conversation involved the head doctor Vladimir Ivanovich, the anesthesiologist and some other people. Women's voices mixed with men's. And Varya realized that they were talking about the very same patient she had found in the operating room. And why can't you keep your promises? Vladimir Ivanovich asked sternly. Yes, because I have already done them. I immobilized this, what's his name, your Danila Elvovich, objected Pyotr Efremovich, who was the anesthesiologist at the hospital. But explain to me why I should be present for everything else. Because an anesthesiologist is required to be present during an operation, objected an unfamiliar female voice. You understand that this alone arouses suspicion. And what do you think, dear Marina? I don't know what your patronymic is, Pyotr Efremovich interrupted her. The murder of a person does not arouse any suspicion. Yes, this is not murder, Pyotr Efremovich, but merely a medical error, said the head physician. Excellent. This is merely a pre-planned medical error, the anesthesiologist said, offended. No, if you please. I will suffer more than all of you put together anyway. However, you will also receive much more money than all of us. Let me remind you. Another voice objected, which Varvara did not recognize. But you know, I am not trying for myself. My mother is sick, Pyotr Efremovich objected in a dejected voice. And have you thought about what will happen to her if I am imprisoned? My dear fellow. But you were warned in advance. You knew what risks you were taking. Think about what will happen to your mother if we do not finish what we started and our dear Danilo Lvovich comes to his senses. Wouldn't it be better for us all to calm down, drink some tea and return to the operating room to finish what we started and, finally, make our Marinachka a widow? I ask you to note, a very, very rich widow. And God willing, nothing terrible will happen to any of us. And he will not wake up there while we are here, suggested a voice that apparently belonged to Marinachka, the future widow. He will not wake up. The anesthesiologist grimly muttered. I injected him with a horse dose of anesthesia. It would be wonderful if he didn't kick the bucket without your help, Marinachka grinned. Then it would definitely look like a fatal mistake by Pyotr Efremovich. Considering his problems with his mother, I think he would even be acquitted in court. Well, gentlemen, maybe we should do it this way? Marinachka, I understand your desire to get by with minor problems. But in that case, what will be our share in the financial reward? Or maybe you want to transfer all the funds received after entering into the inheritance to Pyotr Efremovich? The head doctor objected. Volodya, stop talking nonsense. Gentlemen, let's finish your tea and continue already. And without hysterics, please. Marina, aren't you worried that you are leaving your little son without a father? Pyotr Efremovich suddenly asked. Not at all. Who told you that Lev will be left without a dad? His father is alive and well and is sitting in front of you and will finally be able to hug his son legally. Now I understand, Pyotr Efremovich responded again in a gloomy voice. For some reason, that's what I thought. That's why there's such a rush. Do you want to do everything while the child is small and doesn't really remember that he had a different dad in early childhood? Well, that's smart. You've calculated everything, thought everything through. Aren't you afraid that later the child will ask where his mother got such wealth and why she used to have a different last name and everything? Was married to another man. No, I'm not afraid. If people like you keep your mouth shut, my son won't ask unnecessary questions. And if he does, I'll find something to answer him. Marina answered him, already irritated. Maybe it's time to stop trying to persuade you all here like little kids? Or should I go somewhere else? Stop being hysterical, gentlemen. And get down to business. A pretty woman, quite well groomed and pretty, came out of the head doctor's office. It was the wife of that same Danil Lvovich. The head doctor himself walked behind her, almost shoulder to shoulder with the anesthesiologist, an elderly man of about 5 years old, and the surgeon who was to create the appearance of an operation completed brought the procession to an end. As if in slow motion, precisely measuring their steps, they approached the operating room where they had left their victim because the anesthesiologist Pyotr Efremovich had lost his nerve. The head doctor stepped forward and flung open the doors of the operating room. The entire gang of criminals simply froze in stupor. The table was empty. The man who had been lying there unconscious, unable to move, a few minutes ago, was gone. He simply vanished, as if he had never been there. Has he come to? Marina broke the silence with a question. This simply cannot be, answered Pyotr Efremovich. Or someone in a fit of emotion decided to hijack our event. What do you say to that, Pyotr Efremovich? The head doctor pounced on the anesthesiologist. What does that have to do with me? I guarantee that he was immobilized and unconscious, Pyotr shouted. Okay, let's not panic, the surgeon noted. Let's think sensibly and soberly. If he was under anesthesia, he couldn't have left on his own. So, the conclusion follows. Someone took him. And again, no one could have simply led him away by the arm. That means he was taken away on a gurney. And this should have been reflected on the video cameras. We need to go to the security console and review the recordings. And what are we going to tell them? Excuse me, we wanted to kill the guy here, but he escaped. Marina noted sarcastically. No, but we can say that the patient was kidnapped, the anesthesiologist noted. And that's a reason to call the police. The patient was kidnapped. The questions will start. How? Why? For what reason? The police are our worst help right now, Marina noted. Then what to do? The surgeon did not understand. Nothing, the chief physician said almost in a whisper. First of all, don't yell at the whole hospital, shut your mouths and pretend that nothing happened. Look for the escaped corpse on your own. Quote. But, unfortunately, he is not a corpse yet, Marina noted. Quote, and if he guessed? What if he has an accomplice? I dare say, my dear, Vladimir Ivanovich turned to her. The accomplices here are us. And if your husband does have assistants, then if something happens, they will be his saviors. And they will put us in jail, and in different cells. Quote. Cursed be the day I married him, Marina said and covered her face with her hands. Varvara, neither alive nor dead, was pushing a hospital gurney with a man in a state of complete suspended animation in front of her out of fear. What to do? Where to run? She literally had a few minutes to save this man's life. Varvara understood that she couldn't just take him out of the hospital. Firstly, there were video cameras everywhere, and secondly, the guard would immediately ask where she was taking a patient in such a state. Just outside for a walk? No, she had to hide here, in the hospital, at least until he came to. But where could she hide a body almost 2 meters tall and weighing at least 120 kilograms? Varvara herself was surprised how she managed to roll him from the operating table onto a gurney alone. Probably out of fear. Under the influence of adrenaline, even greater miracles happen. Varvara's first thought was to hide Danila in the morgue, but then she changed her mind. Firstly, the criminals would be looking for him and would probably look in the morgue. Secondly, it was cold there. A person can simply freeze and get sick without even regaining consciousness. And thirdly, imagine what a person who wakes up among the dead will feel. What if he thinks that he died, and she will not be able to sit next to him to calm him down right away? No, that was not an option. But where then? And then Varvara remembered about the cabinet. An ordinary metal hospital cabinet. Medicines that had to be kept under lock and key were kept in such a cabinet. The cleaners kept their inventory in such a cabinet, yes, a lot of things could be put away in such a cabinet. And just on the first floor in a niche near the elevator there was such a cabinet, and it was completely empty. All that remained was to hang a lock on it. There was one problem. How to put a completely relaxed person, practically asleep, upright in a metal cabinet. Varvara got into such a mess for the first time in her life. The girl looked around helplessly, just so that no one would notice her. She was already mentally scolding herself for getting involved in all this. Why? Why did she do it? Maybe she should leave him here by the elevator and run away? That thought was spinning around in her head. But how could she live after that? How could she live knowing what had left a man to certain death? After all, those scoundrels would find him and complete their insidious plan. Yes, of course, they wouldn't puzzle over how he had suddenly moved to a gurney and ended up on the first floor. But that wouldn't make things any easier for the man. No, she had already taken on the task of saving him, so she had to save him, Varvara decided. Enough of this whining. Pull yourself together, quote. She commanded herself. Immediately she remembered the stories about the wartime nurse girls, how they, small and fragile, pulled the wounded out from under fire. It was then that Varvara decided that she would also become a nurse, or even better, a doctor. She even entered a medical school after school. But she did not manage to finish it. Not yet. A quiet, modest girl from an orphanage. She did not always know how to fight for her rights. Sometimes it seemed to Varvara that it would be much better to just cover herself with a blanket and just wait it out. Maybe the problem would resolve itself. She barely remembered how she ended up in an orphanage. Varvara was not one of those children who are abandoned in infancy right in the maternity hospital. She lived in a family, perhaps in a not very prosperous family, which is why she was taken from there. Or maybe something happened. She did not remember. She was about 2 or 3.5 years old. The image of her mother flashed fleetingly along with scraps of memories. An old doll in dirty clothes. Her own clothes were dirty too. The constant feeling of hunger and a strange smell from her mother. When Varvara grew up, she realized that it was the smell of fumes. Having put all the puzzles and scraps of memory together in her head, she guessed. Her mother was an alcoholic. At first, in the orphanage, the poor girl ate like crazy and hid bread under her pillow for later. She put on all the clothes that were given to her at once, apparently to keep warm at night. And Varvara also remembered the girl. She was older than her, but somehow immediately took the little one under her wing. She protected her from other children who tried to undress Varya, and sometimes even shared sweets with her, which the orphanage children rarely got. Varya remembered her friend for the rest of her life. She literally saved her life once, shielding her from a huge dog that broke loose from chains and somehow got onto the territory of the orphanage. All the children ran away, and Varka tripped and fell. She still remembered how, clicking its teeth and splashing saliva, this monster rushed straight at her. Suddenly, out of nowhere, her friend appeared and covered the girl with herself. The dog grabbed her friend's hand. Then the janitor came and drove the dog away. The girl was seriously injured, she even had to be taken to the hospital. Varvara cried and asked to go with her friend, but they left her in the orphanage. She waited for several hours, pressing her nose to the window, for her friend to be brought from the hospital. The girl was brought in late afternoon, then they took her for injections. 40 injections in the stomach. Not everyone can withstand that. Varka cried all the time, worried about her friend, but she calmed her down and consoled her. That was the kind of friendship the girls had. An ugly mark remained on her hand as a memory of this scar. Children's memory works amazingly. Varvara remembered the dog attack in detail. She could even tell what color the dog's fur and eyes were, but she could not remember her friend's name. Either Marussia, or Maria, or maybe Marina. In essence, for Varya, all these names seemed the same. Fate separated the girls. Her friend was adopted. It was there, in the hospital, when she was taken for injections, that she met her adoptive mother. A mature woman, a doctor, respectable, and her husband was a military man. Their fate was such that they lost their only son in the army. Such a terrible story. His father, a military man, who raised his son with his own hands as a future military man, proudly sent him to serve. An absurd accident in peacetime took the boy's life. He and his wife grieved for a long time. She was already at such an age that she was afraid to give birth to another child. They decided to adopt someone else's, but no boys. The father would not have survived another trip to the army. And then there was this girl from the orphanage who saved her friend from a dog attack. They just met eyes, and the woman immediately understood that this was her girl. Soon Varvara was left alone. She cried and still pressed her nose to the window. Waited for her friend to return, but she did not return. Varvara cried and missed her very much, asked to come to her, at least to visit, but the teachers did not pay attention to her requests. Time will pass, everyone will take care of you, they said. And indeed, time passed, but Varya never forgot her friend from the orphanage. It seemed that if they met after so many years, she would definitely recognize her. But the years passed. The orphanage was left behind. Varvara entered college, and then met her love, true and only, as it seemed to her then. As often happens, having become infatuated with a young man, Varvara forgot about her studies. She was successfully expelled from college for poor academic performance and evicted from the dormitory. She came to her young man, but there his mother said that they did not need people from the orphanage in the family. They were not going to adopt anyone. She said this with such disdain and mockery that Varya immediately felt as if she was not just second-rate, but even third-rate. There was nowhere to go. She spent several days on the street, spent the night at the station, and then met Ida Karlovna, a very nice old Jewish woman. She herself approached Varvara, who was already losing consciousness from hunger. And before Karlovna, a former doctor, now retired, worked part-time at the hospital with a nurse. Not for the money, of course. She was just one of those people who cannot sit idly by without work. They wither without work. Ida Karlovna's son had long since left for Israel. Her grandchildren were there, and everyone was calling her to her historical homeland. But she could not abandon her graves, as she called them. Ida's parents, brothers and husband were all buried here. She refused to move in with her son, so meeting Varenka was simply a gift of fate for her. Varvara became her salvation. And yes, Karlovna talked at the hospital, and Varya was hired to work with the nurse instead of Ida, as if she had given up her place to her. Enough for me, I've worked enough, apparently, Ida said. Varvara lived with her, helped with the housework, and soon discovered that she was expecting a child. My dear, giving birth is not a difficult matter, Ida Karlovna told her. But not in your situation. It was she who persuaded her to terminate the pregnancy and even introduced her to the right doctor. Nothing foreshadowed trouble, but, as they say, at the most inopportune moment, something went wrong. Varvara had a serious complication, and in the end the doctors said that she would not have children. Varvara cried, but with Ida Karlovna's persuasion she agreed that maybe it was for the best. But what children in our cruel world? Ida died quietly. In the dream, none of the relatives came to the funeral. Varya buried her herself, modestly, with what money was enough. But to take up the rights to the inheritance and steal everything valuable, the relatives came in a friendly crowd. Of course, the apartment had long been rewritten to one of Ida's grandchildren. Varya was politely asked to leave. Yes, she herself was not going to stay there. No one, of course, returned any money to her spent on the funeral. In general, an unpleasant story. Several days Varya spent the night in the hill. Then the hospital management, in memory of Ida's services, allocated Varya a room in a communal apartment. At the cost of incredible efforts and not without the help of the same adrenaline, Varvara somehow put Danila in the iron cabinet. It was simply impossible to put him upright, but she managed to sit him down, bend his legs and close the door. Now he was in a semi-sitting position. Of course, the man could not stay there forever, but he could still wait for some time. Then Varvara only had to figure out how to get him out of the hospital. But where? To her home? And why not? No one saw her return to the operating room for the phone. No one saw her take him out. So why should suspicion fall on her at all? As if nothing had happened, Varvara returned to work. She walked past the head doctor and the anesthesiologist all day long. And here's what surprised Varvara. With what Spartan fortitude they did pretending that nothing had happened. She was convinced that the criminals did not suspect her in any way. But Varvara still felt a strange feeling. She knew the criminals, she knew who they were. She wanted so much to grab them by the face and scream, "What are you bastards doing?" It was funny to realize that you know them by sight, but they don't know you. From time to time, she approached her hiding place and changed the position of Danila's arms and legs so that they wouldn't go numb. Nevertheless, it was necessary to somehow take the patient out. Varvara came up with a simple scheme. She simply transferred him to a wheelchair and took him out for a walk, supposedly. Patients from the traumatology department were often taken out to the park near the hospital on exactly these gurneys. Varvara called a taxi in advance, and they left safely. By evening, Danilo came to his senses. He was stunned by everything that had happened. It turns out that he was brought to the hospital already unconscious. The last thing he remembers is how he and his wife were sitting in some cafe. Oh, come on, it can't be, this is some kind of prank. Danila didn't believe it when Varvara told him what had happened. There must be hidden cameras somewhere. Where is the film crew? It's all Marinka set it up. Yes, she had promised me a surprise for a long time. Varvara no longer knew how to explain to this person that there was no prank, much less a surprise. It was all the truth. All that was left was to wait. Unfortunately, Danila could not just get up and leave Varvara. He was naked in the operating room. He had nothing but the hospital blanket she had covered him with when she wheeled him out in a wheelchair. Danilo was forced to agree to stay with Varvara, only to realize after some time that there was no film crew. The girl is telling the truth. I only feel sorry for Levka. He will miss me, said Danilo. Levka is his son, am I right? Yes, my son, I just adore him. He is so cute, so smart, he is just beginning to explore the world, learning new words. He spoke about the boy with such admiration and enthusiasm that Varvara did not dare tell him what she had heard, that Lova was not his son at all. In the end, it was none of her business. Let them figure it out themselves. She had accomplished her task, saved his life. Let the one he had saved figure it out himself. Danila spent 3 days with Varvara. During this time, he became convinced that all this was not a prank, and the girl had really saved him. What did the photo she had taken in the operating room eloquently say? Danila was becoming sadder and sadder every day. Now he had to sort things out with his wife and, most likely, get a divorce. The hardest thing for Varvara was to go to work every day as if nothing had happened and pretend that nothing had happened. However, it was not easy at home either. After all, she was a young woman, not made of iron. And Danila was a real handsome man. Especially since she had seen him in all his glory, so to speak. And now he walked around her house, covered with a blanket. There were no clothes. On the third day, Danila took Varvara's phone and called his lawyer. He arrived a few minutes later, bringing a tracksuit, a mobile phone, and money. Varvara refused the reward, pleasantly surprising Danila. She hadn't saved him for the money, although she had learned from an overheard conversation that he was very, very rich. So rich that his wife had decided to commit a crime in order to take possession of his wealth. When he left for his place, Varvara even cried one evening. She had become so accustomed to his company and to their evening conversations. What's the point of hiding it? Varvara was simply afraid to admit to herself that she had fallen in love with him. Back then, long ago, in Ida Karlovna's apartment, sobbing into her pillow after the doctor's verdict on childlessness, Varvara had given herself the vow not to fall in love with anyone. In fact, there were no candidates around. The doctors at the hospital were all quite grown up, family-oriented, and most of the staff were women and old ladies like Ida Karlovna. Varvara spent all her free time working. That was the only way she could distract herself from sad thoughts about her fate, which left her first without parents, then without a close friend, without a beloved boyfriend and, finally, without a child, that is, without a future at all. It was more and more terrible to imagine her mature years in complete solitude in her old age. Varvara was especially afraid of the last minutes of her life. She imagined herself lying in her bed as a decrepit old woman. Not only would there be no one to bring her water, but there would even be no one to bury her. These thoughts simply brought a lump to Varya's throat. And cold sweat built up on her back. She once read about an old woman who died alone, and only a week later her neighbors found her. Could this be her fate too? She reassured herself that there are many people in the world who have children and grandchildren, and they leave this life completely alone. Or, for example, take Ida Karlovna. What good is her son and grandchildren? She died with a stranger, in fact, even though they became friends with each other, and the relatives swooped in like crows after the funeral. But Varya could not imagine what fate had in store for her. A week after Danila left, he called her. She did not expect this at all. Danilo suggested meeting. Unfortunately, Varvara, this was not a date, but a business meeting. He needed her to testify at the trial, which he had started against his wife and against the hospital as a whole, represented by the head doctors. I can't, Varya said, dumbfounded. I understand that you are afraid, but I cannot win the trial without your testimony. Otherwise, my accusations will be unfounded. You are my only witness, said Danilo. No, it's not that I'm afraid. I'm not afraid to testify. I'm afraid of what will happen after. After the trial, I will again be left homeless and without work. Lord, that's not a problem, Danilo grinned. I will buy you the apartment you want. And it's unlikely that you've dreamed of becoming a nurse since childhood. What did you want to do for a job? I don't need to buy anything, Varya answered fearfully. I'm not like that. What are you saying? This is just gratitude for saving me. Well, I can't give you a hero's star. And no medal either. But I can thank you like this. Believe me, I'm certainly not poorer than one apartment. So don't be afraid, you definitely won't end up on the street. And I won't win the case without you. You see, my ex-wife claims that I went crazy and ran away from the operating room myself. No, that's simply impossible, Varvara was indignant. You were unconscious, under anesthesia. It was I who took you out when I heard their conversation. That's exactly what we were talking about, Danila smiled. Is this what you wanted to become as a child? You know, as children, we, from the orphanage, didn't want to become anyone, Varya said sadly. We only wanted one thing, for the doors to open and for Mom to come in. And then, already in high school, I wanted to become a doctor, or a nurse. I even went to college, but I didn't finish medical school. There was one sad story there. It's funny how my wife is also from an orphanage. And how different you are. True, she was adopted when she was a child. Maybe that influenced her. Although it seems like a decent family. The adoptive parents are such intelligent people. It seemed like they did everything for her. Maybe they just spoiled her? Look at you. It seems like you're both from an orphanage, but so different. So what, if you're from an orphanage, then you should all be the same, Var was surprised. We're not from an incubator. We all have different parents, just like ordinary people. Well, have we agreed that you'll testify in court? Will you help me? Danila asked again. Varvara didn't answer, she just nodded her head. How could she not testify? How could she not help this man? She was already madly in love with him and even more. Probably, if Danila really asked her to jump off the bridge right now, she would do it without thinking, and now he also promised to buy her an apartment if something happened. Although Arya no longer believed it. Everything was turning out too much like in a movie. She wanted to ask him if he found out that the child was not his. But somehow she again did not dare. In the end, it was definitely none of her business and had nothing to do with the murder. It was not because of this that she decided to do such a wild thing. She just wanted to get his wealth and would certainly have done it even if Danilo was actually the father of her child. Life is a strange thing after all. Very strange. Varvara received a subpoena to give evidence. She did not see Danila again for now. She understood that she should not tell anyone about his visit and his promise to buy her an apartment if something happened. And she would find herself a job. Especially a nurse, for sure. In hospitals, they are the most sought-after personnel. She told the investigator how it all happened. Word for word, as she heard, only again she did not mention Danila's paternity. There was no need for that, she decided. Let them figure it out themselves. Marina and his mother had already been arrested, and the boy was with Danila. Why ruin the child's life? After all, if he is not his father, then he will obviously be sent to an orphanage. and Varvara would not wish this on anyone, especially if the child is from a rich family. Nothing but disappointment awaits him in the orphanage. Let everything take its course, Varvara decided. The investigator was especially amused by the story of how Varvara hid Danila in the closet. Quote, "It would be worth making a comedy about this," he said. Varvara's next visit was supposed to be to court. When she walked in and saw Marina, now Daniil's ex-wife, in the dock, she felt goosebumps run down her spine. So many years had passed since then, but she still hadn't forgotten the eyes of the girl who had protected her in the orphanage. It was her best childhood friend Marina. Exactly. That was her name. Marina, you. Varvara burst out. In the blink of an eye, she was at the dock, grabbed Marina by the arm and pulled up her sleeve. That's right. Everything was correct. The scar from the dog bite was still there. Varvara couldn't hold back and hugged Marina. "Witness, behave decently, otherwise I will remove you from the courtroom," the judge commanded, and Varvara returned to her seat. The whole time, when the judge was reading something and other people were talking, Varvara didn't take her eyes off Marina. What should she do now? What should she do now? She found herself between a rock and a hard place. How could she now testify against her friend who had saved her as a child? How could she break her word to Danila? God, what should she do now? How could she get out of this situation? Varvara never understood whether Marina herself recognized her or not. But apparently there is a God in this world or some other forces. Chance saved Varvara from testifying when the head doctor was invited as a witness, and the case was heading towards him being charged, and maybe even arrested in the courtroom. Marina could not stand it. She confessed to everything, took all the blame on herself. Apparently, she really loved this man. She herself said that she had been deceiving Danila for many years and that Lev's son was not his, but the son of this very head doctor. The court postponed the hearing indefinitely. The case was sent for further investigation, and in the end Varvara's testimony was not needed. Marina confessed everything. Varvara left the courtroom dumbfounded and saw Danila, who was sitting on a bench and crying. He had just found out that his wife, although already an ex, had not only cheated on him for many years, but also had given birth to a son who was not his. Well, what do you think a person can feel at such a moment? Varvara came up to him, sat down next to him and quietly hugged him by the shoulder. After all, I love him, like I love my own son. Quote, "What should I do now?" Danila asked almost in a whisper. Well, keep loving. It's simple. You shouldn't tell him the truth, at least for the time being. And for now, just continue to love him as before. Remember that your world has changed, maybe even collapsed, but his world remains the same, not allowing circumstances to destroy it. You're a grown man, look how big and handsome you are. You can handle it, you can withstand it, but a little boy can't. Where are you from? Danila asked and hugged Varya. I'm here at home, she smiled. Marina was convicted of attempted murder. The head doctor got off with a slight fright. He was removed from his post and deprived of his medical license without reinstatement. Now he'll probably have to go to work as an orderly. The judge insisted on conducting a DNA test for Lova and his biological father. Then the head doctor was offered to take the child with him. He smiled and very politely refused. At that moment, Varvara saw how on Danila's face relief was reflected. This is who really loved the boy and was truly worthy of the title of father. From the time she came up to him and sat down on the bench after the first court session, they were together. Danila simply could not let her go home. He, too, was in love with his savior. Now they lived together, and Varvara fell in love with little Lyavyushka as if he were her own son. Thank God, all the sessions, all the litigation, etc. were behind her. Now Varvara was no longer afraid of being left without work and without housing. She had quit her job long ago and was taking care of Lyav. Together with Danila, they were preparing for the wedding. But that meeting in the courtroom, fate and Marina's fate did not give her any peace. Before she and Danila got married, Varvara decided to do at least something for her friend who saved her life. Her adoptive parents stopped communicating with her immediately after her arrest. They did not need such a daughter. And who would blame them? Sometimes even relatives are abandoned in such situations. Varvara decided to talk to them. Maybe that childhood incident with the dog would help them look at Marina differently and understand that somewhere deep down she wasn't so bad. Marina's adoptive father had died long ago, and her mother was a very old woman. She hadn't abandoned Marina, as Varvara thought. It was just that Marina herself had stopped communicating with them long ago, practically as soon as she got married. She never called me mom, said a very old woman, looking at Varvara over her glasses. Do you understand? Only by name. Marina never said mom and was always angry about something. I never understood how I offended her. Marina was a very difficult girl, but we did not give up, we endured everything. We helped her, although we were offered to return her back many times. Now I am too old. I cannot visit her or bring her parcels, and she does not want to answer letters. Then Varvara decided to find Marina's biological mother or her father. Or at least just find out what happened to them. It was necessary to understand why she ended up in an orphanage, what happened to her parents, where to start the search, if not from the orphanage itself. Varvara went there. With some strange feeling she approached the gate. She used to think that she would never return here in her life. She ran away from here without looking back when she entered college. But now she stands there and tears come to her eyes. There is the swing where she used to swing with Marinka as a child. And there is the very spot where she fell when that dog came running. It was strange to find herself, after so many years, in the place that she had hated since childhood, and to realize that, it turns out, there are warm memories of being in the orphanage. Varvara sighed, opened the gate and took a step. Surprisingly, the headmistress was the same woman who had been with Varvara. She even remembered her and that incident with the dog. Now, after so many years have passed, it probably won't be an official crime to tell you a secret, the headmistress said. What kind of secret? Varvara was surprised. We made many mistakes, but most of them were made with good intentions, the headmistress said. You must forgive. But when you were brought here, everyone understood that no one would adopt two girls at once. And so there is a chance to get into a family of at least one, or even both. More often they take two to raise, if it is a brother and sister, or two boys. No one takes two girls. In my practice, there has not been a single case. Forgive me, I don't understand at all what you are talking about now, Varvara was surprised. About that, the headmistress's eyes went blank. About the fact that you are not friends, you are sisters. She is 2 years older. But forgive us, girl, it was necessary. We told you that you are friends so that you would not get used to each other. Everyone was happy when Marinachka was taken away, but look how things turned out for her. Varvara could not hold back her tears. She ran out of the orphanage, as she had already run out of it once, and again swore that she would never cross its threshold. How could they? How dare they do this to them? And if they had not been separated, maybe that woman would have agreed to take in her sister as well. Who gave the right to cut other people's lives in such a clumsy way? Even if Marina had not been taken away. But they would have each other, and maybe she would not have become like this. Varvara realized that Marina was now her cross to bear. Now she would help her and bring her parcels and maybe even wait for her from prison. But Marina refused to communicate with her either. She did not come for a short or a long meeting. That was her decision. Soon after her wedding with Danila, Varvara nevertheless broke her oath again and came to the orphanage. But this time she and her husband decided to take a child into their care. Varvara decided to break the system to prove to the headmistress how wrong she had been many years ago. She and Danila adopted 3 girls at once. Lova had 3 sisters at the same time. Andrei was with you. Thank you for choosing me. We have been writing stories for you for 4 years now. We will be glad to see you back on Legbees for new emotions. All the best. M.